So tonight we're going to be looking at the 1950s, and this presentation actually focuses on what was on in North Carolina during the 1950s. We're looking at the economic background, how World War II kind of impacted things that were in North Carolina, and then how those economic factors eventually led us into Cold War. So your essential question for tonight was, how did economic factors in the United States, or even in North Carolina, impact the Cold War? So one of the big things that increases after World War II is the farming. And we know that North Carolina especially was a huge agricultural state. So farms are going to end up actually growing smaller because we have all kinds of new farming technology that we're using, including things like tractors. Even though the farms were growing smaller, the incomes were growing larger. It was because we were able to produce more goods off of those smaller farms. Farmers grew things like tobacco, cotton, hay, and then they also raised dairy cattle. And you can still see those things throughout North Carolina, specifically in the coastal plain today, because we're still such an agricultural state. So we're going to start to see the wealth kind of spreading out. Up until this point, we've got, we'd had a really high upper class and a really kind of lower income, lower class. The prosperity from that upper class is going to start to trickle down to some of the lower income people. So rural residents get things like telephone service, paved roads, electricity are all going to be part of the everyday household. So North Carolinians were really proud of the products that they actually put out onto the market. The big things that we were known for was the big three. It's tobacco, and textiles is going to be a huge one. Textiles meaning, the upholstery, bed sheets, things along those lines that are really important to our industry. So we've got the wooden furniture, we've got cigarettes, we've got sweet potatoes and peanuts, which were going to be used during the war and after the war. So like I was saying, the big three. The majority of people in North Carolina had jobs in factories that were producing, or mills that were producing goods from tobacco, textiles, and furniture. Textiles and furniture kind of went hand in hand because the furniture was not only wooden furniture, but it was upholstered furniture, like your couch probably is. Tobacco Road was the biggest money maker. You had Winston and Salem brand cigarettes, and that's, of course, how we got Winston-Salem, the name for Winston-Salem. But the two were separate for a while. Burlington Mills and Cannon Mills were the largest textile operations. They made fabrics and sheets for a variety of different things throughout the world. Half of the western counties had at least one furniture factory, so that was furniture that was being built out of the trees that were in the west. So we were also in the process of attracting all kinds of new industry. More jobs were needed as the population grew in North Carolina and throughout the United States, our states. So we had cheap land, low taxes, and low salaries were used to recruit dozens of northern manufacturers to the South. So companies that had not been in the South before were coming to the South at this time period because we were able to provide all of the types of goods and labors that they needed at a cheaper price. So the airline industry becomes important as a result of this. You have Piedmont Airlines, which was formed in 1948. And then we have Research Triangle Park, which was created in the 50s. And this was when large companies moved to the area. Between Raleigh and Durham, it's still out there, RTP. And they took advantage of the graduates that were coming out of UNC, State, Duke, in order to provide extra research and development. Those were some of the countries that were moving in from places like California and New York. Raleigh-Durham did a really good job recruiting those companies because of all of the education that was available at the time. So labor union failures, we had low wages, which continued to be a problem, especially in the mills in North Carolina. Workers were suspicious of unions because they had not worked in the past and they had caused actually more problems than they were worth. Unsuccessful attempts were made to unionize cigarette factories and textile factories, but most of the times it didn't work in the South. And to this day you see a really big difference between the northern states, which are primarily union states, and then the southern states, which aren't. So the growth of cities. Downtowns, especially places like Durham, Raleigh, you're going to start to see a little bit in Chapel Hill, Winston-Salem are going to begin to really, really grow. So parking becomes a problem. You're going to start to see these huge new department stores. Belk used to be in downtown Raleigh. Supermarkets are going to begin to be developed, and you're also going to see shopping centers and banks grow at a really quick rate because you've got more people that have money. They've got more money to spend. They've got more money to save as well. So in 1961, we see the first enclosed shopping center outside of Charlotte. So as a result of all of these things that we just talked about, rural non-farm families grew. Families who lived in the country did not spend all of their time farming anymore. They were able to send their kids to college for the first time. They were able to spend time doing other things besides just the farming. So people commuted. They went from maybe smaller towns to larger cities, or smaller towns to other smaller towns to get their jobs because of the ease with the automobile and the new highways. People wanted both a country life and a job in industry. So there were people who wanted to live in the suburbs or live outside of places like Raleigh and then be able to commute in just for the day for their job and then go back out to their peaceful life on their farmland. So families had a lot of different choices about how and where to live. So we were able to make these choices for the first time. We weren't forced to make these decisions based on our family need or anything along those lines. And then finally, entertainment changes. There was a lot more time after the war for a social life. Big things that you're going to start to see growing are minor league baseball, movie theaters, and television are all going to be a new part of everyday life for Americans. You're going to see the first TV show, which allowed people to actually watch TV shows for the first time. You're going to start to see basketball games for the first time in the late 40s and the early 50s as well. So North Carolina was advertised as a variety vacation land in order to promote the ideas of tourism, because once again, families that did not have money to do these extra things had the money during the 50s. So that middle class also wanted to take vacations. People enjoyed going to beach houses, golfing, they went to the mountains to see the sights there, they went to Old Salem to see what life used to be like. So multi-lane highways were built and to help people get back and forth to places as quickly as possible. The interstate highway system connected all parts of the country together, and this was under several different presidents were kind of spearheaded this, but Eisenhower was known for all of his contributions to the highway system in the United States. And then bypasses became common. Bypasses were a blessing and a curse. They allowed people to move around cities to get places quicker, but what ended up happening is these small towns or cities that were based on people driving through ended up having a lot of financial problems, and you still see that in North Carolina today. So keep all of this in mind, make sure you take some good notes on this, and I'll see y'all in class tomorrow.